Dr. Jazz.
We did it.
Well, here we are,
Here
man.
we are, man. Yeah, but Jeff, I'll just jump in. You know, I have you on so many records, and
I'm sorry to hear that.
exactly, that's what my wife would say about it. No,
So thank you.
yeah, and I listen to City a lot lately, and
Oh, thanks, man.
I wanted to start this talk with this album because it's slightly different than what
Hmm.
I was used from you, and it's also, with Mark and Tim, who I associate kind of more with the East Coast sound. Like, what's the
Sure.
story behind this record, and how come with those two guys?
Now I see your sweet basil, and we're talking about the East Coast. We're talking about New York before we got on the air, and I mean that probably you're in the same boat. It sounds like the sound and spirit of New York, improvisatory and creative music is
Yeah.
deep in my blood and my soul. I it always resonated with me, and with most jazz lovers, right? It's the fire, it's the life force of jazz and creative music, rock and pop, and even so far as CBGBs and all those
Mhm.
kind of creative danceteria, all these creative scenes. I think I'm from Los Angeles, so it's a different energy, also very creative and in a different way, but creative music in New York really always spoke to me. So I met Tim. I'd been touring with James Taylor with Keith Carlock. This is
Oh, yeah.
a long time ago. And he played me the Rudder record with Tim that they had just finished at the time, Henry Hay. Um, and I remember listening to that in the bus, and we were talking a lot about Tim. And then very shortly thereafter, I met Tim in New York. I was touring with Sheryl Crow,
Mm,
and
yeah.
at night we were there for a while. We were camping out there doing a bunch of like The View and all these TV shows at Letterman, and so it was like one of those where you're there for a week. But Tim happened to be playing there with Rudder, and some other people. So I was just going to see him at night. I wasn't working at night. It wasn't gigs. It was like afternoon. So we started hanging out, and that's it. So
Mm.
he introduced me to Mark. Mark was not long after that. Mark was coming. Mark was still in New York, and he wanted to do a thing in LA. So Tim recommended me because, oh wow, hold on, let me turn that down. Somebody's sound checking a mandolin.
I
Uh,
love that.
Beautiful, but we don't need an underscore. Um, yeah, so Mark came out to LA to do a gig at the Blue Whale, and Tim recommended he needed a local guy. He knew Troy Ziegler, who's also a drummer who was doing a bunch of sound effect stuff. Amazing soundscape, sound design, and I was the only unknown, and being a fan of Mark's through Avishai Cohen stuff, and I was already a fan of his playing. And obviously if Tim's it just and Tim was spending a lot more time on the West Coast at that point. I think he moved to Santa Monica at that point.
Mm,
So I was just happy. The Blue Whale at that point, if to those that don't know, was a hotbed of creativity on the West Coast. And it did definitely bring the New York,
yeah.
I mean, so many people from the Monk Institute were coming out. And so it really had an energy that we had been, I don't think we ever had experienced to that level. We'd had clubs like Rocco's and things, but it was still a West Coast creative kind of, Cal Arts is a great college called Cal Arts. It was more that scene. And this just was a little fierier and a little more forward, I felt like.
Mm,
Less art ensemble of Chicago, more gritty,
yeah.
young, so that's how it happened. So we did one gig with Mark and then we made a record with Mark called Beat Music LA, I think. And we did a bunch of gigs at the Blue Whale together with Troy, that quartet. And when Sam First, the club, asked me to do a date, I had done a gig at Sam First, done a few, but I'd done one that didn't go where I played horribly. So I was kind of allergic to, I did not want that to repeat itself. It was three piano players and I was last. And a friend of mine had passed away that day and I was out of my mind and I played bad. I played badly and that's
Sure.
never a good feeling. So I had this stink on I was like, also my son is getting older at this point and I don't need to be doing gigs every night when I'm in town. I have all these full-time jobs and I was like, I don't need to. But so when he asked me to play, Dave Robert, who's a great guy at Sam First, I said, I will play if I can get Tim and Mark, and they said yes. So I think the first one we did was maybe 2021, 22. So there weren't as much touring happening, still out of COVID, and there weren't as many gigs. So I think it was easier for us to get together. And as Mark pointed out, is a lot different for us to get together based on a piano. I didn't even usually uncover the piano at the Blue Whale. It was all like synths and
Mm,
maybe Fender Rhodes through a pedal board. And so it was really interesting. This gig, it was just piano and a Prophet 10 with a bunch of with a one pedal, I think. And so it was a different nucleus and Troy wasn't there. So it got a little jazzier, but it's still in a futuristic version of it way.
mm.
That's how we saw it anyway.
Yeah, it sounds way jazzier in a sense when I listen to it. You know,
Cool.
like less fusion in a positive way
Good.
of
No,
the
I mean
word,
I
you know.
love fusion, but I think
Me
the
too. Yeah,
piano
yeah, but
being the
yeah,
focal point
yeah,
definitely steered it a slightly different direction.
yeah, yeah. Is this a band you'll continue doing, or I mean,
They're busy guys.
yeah, they're
I
really
mean,
busy, right? Yeah,
I would love, I mean, I basically we love hanging out and we hang out more often than we play. So getting a gig together is harder than hanging out. So
sure,
I don't think I think it will definitely will play again. You just never know when. It
sure.
depends on when a venue asks
Yeah,
or
yeah,
we'll see. We'll see what the demand is.
yeah,
We love playing together and really it's an excuse for us to, as I've told others, like it's a cute excuse for us to hang out, but on the bandstand with our instruments instead of our personalities are coming out through our playing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly. I mean, but you're so busy anyway. Like, I mean, I checked on your website when you're posting the news and Steve Gadd and there's Steely Dan, like some of my favorite things. Like I wanted to ask you about Steely Dan.
Mhm.
Sadly when Jim passed away, how did you end up on that gig, and what did that mean to you? I mean, like
It's a highlight of my life. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It's not hyperbole. It was one of the highlights of my life, personally and professionally. Getting that call from being vetted by Jim before he passed. Um, John Harrington calling
oh
me,
yeah,
Carlock was definitely the catalyst for that happening. And John Beasley had done a few gigs. We were all just trying to figure out how to cover for Jim until he got better. We all thought he was going to get better. And so the last night that I did it in, I think, Hollywood, Florida, is when we found out he passed that day.
okay.
And no, I mean, very few people saw it coming. We all thought he was going to get better. He'd gotten pretty quiet, I think, the last week, but all indications were that he was going to improve. So that was a little bit bitter. I mean, a lot bittersweet. Um, but the fact that he vetted me beforehand made me feel better about the situation. Doing the gig was pretty crazy. I mean, I only had 5 days notice.
Oh
So,
wow, shit, man. Okay.
so I didn't really, maybe I talked to Larry once about it because he'd done a few. We were all just kind of, jumping in. And honestly, the materials for learning the gig weren't that plentiful. There weren't that many. I mean, it was like fan shot YouTube videos and charts that were occasionally correct or accurate. And this is where you just thankful that, and I tell students this a lot and younger musicians and older musicians, like, listen, your whole life is prep for whatever it is, your whole life. So my life of studying those records, I mean, Royal Scam changed my
Oh,
life.
whew, man,
Um,
yeah.
Night Flight changed my life. Asia changed my life. Gaucho changed. I mean, really, and that's not an overstatement. I mean, that's like, yeah, these records were pivotal in teaching me harmony and production and playing and pocket and touch and parts. So I've done a lifetime of homework, whether I knew it or not. But playing, it's very different. Like all those slick turnarounds, those Fagan, it's like you cannot miss them. Everyone knows them. And also Mike Lenhart, who's the trumpet player and often horn arranger and Fagan's last producer, I met him in high school, so I know Mike pretty. So he was able to offer me
Okay.
some little pointers, and he basically said, just if you're sitting in the pocket and you're not on top, Donald will be happy. Um, so no pressure. Like play all these super sophisticated chords, but don't rush. But it was great advice, and it's real easy with Freddie and Keith to sit in the pocket. I mean, all you got to do. First day rehearsal were really cool. Like Donald wanted to run the whole set with me because I was new, and this is the first time ever where a whole band was like, "We're all in. Let's run the whole set." Nobody was like, "Oh man, like we got to run the lot." Most gigs they'll say, we got to do it twice." They were super down to run the whole set, and they were all really helpful. But I was most nervous I've been ever. I mean, in a
Sure.
long time. That first rehearsal, and then we blew out the cobwebs, and I think the gig went fine. It was really fun hanging out with Donald and catering, and getting to hear Mike and Keith and Freddie and John and Adam
Yeah.
Rogers, just a powerhouse
Oh yeah,
guitar.
Adam was on guitar. Yeah, I love Adam, man. Yeah.
Like I don't know who to turn up more in my monitor. Singers are great. Yeah, it was a highlight of my life. Like I think about it almost every day. Like I can't
Mm,
believe that happened.
mm. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because for me also Steely Dan, it's like, musically, man, it's insane.
It's for, I mean, really, it's
Yeah,
the,
yeah, yeah,
I was telling my wife who's a classical musician, I was like, you don't maybe know, but this is like the kind of the ultimate life. Like this doesn't happen. Like in my life, I didn't see this happen. Like this would never happen. Also, Jim was so good. Like he was never not going to have the gig,
yeah.
and nor should he not. But Beasley had done the gig before. My friend Jeff Young, who's since passed, had done the gig before, and I just thought that gig was never going to be up for grabs. So very sad that this is why it happened. But
Yeah, yeah.
I can only pay my respects to Jim by saying he's left back behind a body of work that I wish everyone had checked out while he was here to receive the accolades, because it's a body of work that's
Yep.
remarkable. He's such a beautiful player and producer and harmonic genius and texture genius. And yeah, I wish I could, he could be around to show us what was next.
Mm, yeah, yeah, so true. We were supposed to make this interview with Jim, and we had a date, and he passed away then, like I think 2 days before the interview. So it's like I was like, man, shit. I didn't even
Yep.
know he was so bad because on
No
emails
one
he was
knew.
really responsive and like, yeah, man, let's do the blah blah blah. And
I know.
I
And
was
I,
quite
I know
shocked to be
that
honest.
that stuff was keeping him going. I mean, I think the promise of what was to come,
Yeah,
from what I understand, was, like anybody, he had a lot of life to live.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
all we can do is carry out his message, and he'd want music to keep getting hipper and have us keep putting out the stuff.
definitely. Yeah. Jeff, you mentioned Steely Dan, and uh, what got you excited for the music you play nowadays? I mean, like for the improvisation and for jazz. And did you have like a specific moment that you said like, shit, I want to play this? Like, did you hear a record, or how did that happen for you?
When I was young, or now, I still
Yeah,
get excited, so we
yeah,
can
yeah.
start
No,
anywhere.
I guess
But
when you were a teenager, I mean, or when
I
did?
mean, it started younger because my dad had some jazz record. My dad had a Blood, Sweat, and Tears record that I loved. It was the Spinning Wheel one, which is, what is it,
Yeah.
2 or 3? And the one called Blood, Sweat, and Tears that was like brown and white, not the first one with Randy Brecker and all them, not and Al Cooper, but
Yeah.
I guess the second one. And 3, though we had 2. And so those were really, I remember I'd study the gatefold record and look at all the players and just study what they played, and it just sounded like another world coming off the turntable. Like And then somebody gifted me Stevie Wonder Talking Book when I was 4 or 5. And
Oh
that
wow,
was, I
already.
remember just hearing just all the clavinets. And I remember seeing a clavinet in the local music store where I grew up in Southern California and just thinking, oh my gosh, that's the sound from the Stevie Wonder record, but not really knowing, you just recognized, there's what, 3 clavinets on Superstitious, like that sound.
Mm.
And then my dad had a record called Southern Comfort by the Crusaders. So that stuff, and Ramsey Lewis's Christmas record. Those were
Mm.
the first records where I went, I wanted to be like that. I wanted to play soulfully like Ramsey Lewis and just have the feeling of that rhythm section, which was super funky and swinging and just like no nonsense. And it was kind of the same feel from the Crusaders record, just a pocket. And I don't know if the improvisation was speaking to me as much as just feeling great and sounding cool and funky and like. And then he had Pretzel Logic, but I don't remember
Mm.
listening to it. I just remember he was a high school teacher, and I remember him saying that the high school kids told him to get a Steely Dan record. But I think they meant Asia, and I think he got the wrong. I think he got it because this would have been 77 or so. I think that's what they were listening to, and and I don't think he got Pretzel Logic, and I definitely didn't get it either when I was 6. First Steely Dan, I remember Peg being on the radio when I was going to elementary school when I was 5. It was on the bus. I remember being on the bus. And but I remember we had a local video show, like a music video show. Um, and New Frontier came on, the video where he's in the bomb shelter and they have the little animated and they talk about It's such a cool video. And I just remember I don't think I realized Donald Fagen was Steely Dan. I was 10 when that came out. But I just thought it was so rad. And I went to a
Mm.
used record store and I bought the Nightfly for a couple dollars. And then I remember pulling out the blue sleeve and seeing all the players on it. And I was already at 10 living in LA. I knew who Toto, I was a fan of Toto 4. That was a huge Toto 4 was probably the one that made me realize that's what I want to do.
Mm. Interesting.
Studying Page and the pocket and the playing. That just put it all together. So I recognized some of the names. I recognized Jeff Babko's name, and then I was watching David Letterman, so I recognized Will Lee's name. I recognized Steve George's name. I recognized Abe Laboriel's name, and I'm just thinking this. And then the one that was weird to me was Larry Carlton because I'm like, wait a second, like all this guitar, it's all over this record.
Yeah.
This guy, like, I feel like I know his name, and then I realized he was the same guy from the Crusaders, and I was so putting all that together was like a puzzle to me, and it was like all the characters that it just was Nightfly it all came together for me.
Interesting.
And then I
Yeah.
went Filling Gaines, forget about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Oh yeah.
was
Exactly. Yeah.
pivotal record. That
Interesting.
and Toto 4 probably at that time, and when I was 10, 11, I went, whatever this is what I want. This is where I want to go.
Interesting. It's funny.
Harmony was sophisticated. It was jazzy, but it wasn't
Yeah. Yeah.
jazz.
Yeah. 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 Exactly.
It was hip. It was grooving. It was smart, but it wasn't too smart. It was just awesome. And then 80s were going on too, and I was super into new wave because I was into the sound of synthesizers and keyboards were getting to be really big. And before I got into Chick Corea and Jan Hammer
Sure.
and I was kind of always into Herbie because Rocket was out. I mean, and I was 11 when Rocket came out. It was awesome. It sounded like the 80s, but on Auto Drive, he plays a killing piano solo. So there was a lot of gateways that were just sneaking in the hard stuff.
Interesting. Yeah. It's funny you're mentioning all these names like Steely Dan, and then you got to play with them. Toto, you played with Simon.
And Toto, I played with Toto in 2000. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. Rather. Yeah.
Yep.
And
I play
Larry
with these guys
Carlton,
all the time. I
obviously,
see
like,
them.
and amazing. And Steve Lukather, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, Luke all the time. I see them all the time. I'll see Steve Porcaro this week.
Oh,
These are. I mean, that's the weirdest thing about my life is that I didn't mean for it to manifest to be part of my life. I was just inspired by it, and somehow, I was able to. I mean, I didn't work to do that. It just has worked out and when these guys realize their music and that you understand it from the inside out, they appreciate it.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. How did I mean, I checked my records that I have you on. I think it's Simon Phillips. This is some of the first I have you on, like from
Yeah, I think that's probably the earliest you're
right.
gonna
Yeah,
say.
and
96,
yeah, yeah,
97.
another lifetime. I think 90,
Yeah,
90.
that would have been very early. Yeah,
How did that call?
95.
How did Simon find out about you? Like, how did you get the call? And
Yeah, Mitch Foreman, who's a great keyboard
yeah, sure.
player. I had moved back. I went to school in Miami. I went to college in Miami. So I left LA to go to Miami, and then I
Oh, well.
came back. When I came back, I was just hustling for gigs. So I had a little group of my own, quartet with this guy Mike Elizondo on bass, and we were all hustling. We were all just trying to get work, trying to have people recognize who we were so we could start working. During that time, I had my little band, and we opened for the singer Kevin Littau at a place called the Wadsworth in LA. And Mitch was Kevin's keyboard player at the time. Mitch was doing a gig across town with Elements with Mark Egan and Danny
Oh yeah,
Gottlieb.
yeah, yeah.
So he couldn't make sound check. So I played sound check. And Mitch came in at the end, and he realized I was also a fan of Kevin Littau, so I knew her music. So I was like psyched. I was like, "This is awesome!" And again, I wasn't like gunning for that gig. I just was there. So Mitch came in and said something like he realized I could hang, and then he was in Simon's band. So I was on the road with Julio Iglesias. Our
Okay.
drummer Lee Levin had Simon's Symbiosis record, the CD. He loaned it to me, and there was also a Roger Daltrey live record that Simon was on, playing the hits of the Who or something.
Mm,
And I was like, dude, this is. I remembered Simon from all my friends' Modern Drummers record, Modern Drummer magazines,
yeah.
and I remember him from the Pete Townsend solo stuff, Face to Face, and all that. But and his big kit, of course. So I was a fan. And Mitch said Simon's going on this. So I'd listened to his solo record, and Mitch literally called like a week later, said, I can't do this tour in Europe. He was having his first son, Ellis, I think. And can you do it? I just couldn't believe it. I was like, this is where I want to like that point that's the level I want to be in. Julio Iglesias was a great tour, and it was with my friends, but this is what I want to be doing. Like I
Sure.
want to
Yeah.
be these guys. So I had all these really long charts, like Indian Summer in 15, all these songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did a video shoot for this tango video, all these tango dancers, and I was just had my Simon charts out the whole time in the CD, my Discman, and I was just learning Simon all during the whole video shoot for 3 days. And then we rehearsed it with Jimmy Earl, just the three of us
Mm,
at the power plant in LA. And I mean, I was just so inside the music that it worked out. They said, "Yeah, you clearly have learned the music."
good.
But Simon will say he didn't know if I would be the right guy because I looked really young, and he came to my apartment that I shared with a roommate, and I had all my records, my Stanley Clarke records, and he said when I opened the door, he was like, "I don't know if this is going to work," but then he realized like he was 16 when he started working, and I was already 24, so he's like, "What am I?" Well, I mean, I was the same way, and I loved he realized I had such an affinity for the
Mm,
music. He believed in it, and that was my first break. And then Lukather and Paige and all those guys would come to our gigs in town, and so that's how I
mm.
got kind of noticed by Dave, and that's why Dave believed in me enough to let me sub for him, and then Luke had me arrange his Christmas album, and like that all kind of
Yeah.
snowballed
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah. Especially with guitarists. I mean, I'm a guitarist myself, and I know I bought those Robin Ford and Larry Carlton records you were on, and like, what's the story with Larry and Robin? I mean, and playing with them. I mean, especially, but I mean, both of them. I'm such a huge fan, actually. So
Me too. And same like Larry, who I told you, like learning from seeing his name all over that Nightfly
yeah.
record, he was just like, for me, the Last Night record, the Live at the Big Potato record, was another. So I was probably 14 when I heard that record, and I was learning jazz, but I was living in LA and I was loving Toto and like contemporary music and pop music, rock music, and that to me was like, oh, they're playing a Miles Davis song, but it's not old sounding, it's new sounding. It
Yeah.
sounds like the 80s, it sounds like LA, and that just appealed to me. Terry Trotter playing the heck out of that Rhodes and JR, and just like, yeah, and I knew the Baked Potato wasn't far from where I lived, so my dad took me to the Baked Potato, and then I would so it all kind of, that's another connecting. So Larry really represented to me, and he knows this, the first time where, kind of like what we said about the Night Fly and Steely Dan, like the dots were connecting. Yeah, this is jazz, but it's also pop and commercial music, and the way he phrased just,
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, how do you not like, I mean, the way he can play one phrase and everybody likes. I mean, it just appeals to everybody. It's blues, it's rock, it's pop, it's jazz, it's just music. It's like a
Mm.
singer, right? And so I think Chaba Pitox, the engineer, well, Travis Carlton reminded me, because Travis was in college at the time. He was at Musicians Institute, and he was coming. I was playing once a month at the Baked Potato with this band Shogun Warrior. We would play the first Sunday of every month for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And Travis was there every week, every month. He was there as a fan, just with all his college buddies, they'd come. So he was telling his dad about me, which I didn't know. And Chaba, who's a great engineer who we lost to cancer, he was one of the greatest guys ever. Somehow it all happened where Larry was working with the keyboard player at Catalina's in LA, and it wasn't working out. He had a week engagement, and he wasn't digging it. And I think Travis and Chubba had been recommending me.
Mm.
And Larry, as a Hail Mary, said, "Will you come over tonight?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, of course." I mean, Larry, of course. And I ended up sitting in, but I think it was a ploy to get this other guy out, because it wasn't happening and it was pretty awkward. And so that was it. Then
Wow.
we made this Firewire record, and
Yeah.
then I played the Blue Note in New York with him, and then we went to Europe and Japan a bunch. Now Robin, and it still means the world to me that he ever believed in me. We've done so much together, and
Mm.
Larry's sense of harmony, and just the hip chords and the Claire Fisher stuff. It's just all the things I love.
Yeah, man, it's like the Hijiro records by Johnny. That's the first time I heard him. I remember I kept playing that Black Crow song just because of what he did on that song. It was nothing fancy, but just the sounds he was getting there. I was like, man, how do you do that? You know, like
I know, it's
crazy
beautiful.
stuff,
The
beautiful
swell, the
stuff. Yeah,
volume stuff, and
yeah, yeah,
it's a feeling as much as anything to me. It's like
yeah,
beyond the instrument.
yeah.
And Robin the same. I think I first heard Robin maybe on the Tomcat record by Tom Scott and the LA Express. Might have been Michael McDonald's first solo record, but his another one where the spelling of his name popped out to me, and it's like, who's this guy? And I just loved his playing on Tomcat and that first Mike McDonald
Yeah.
record, and similar, hooked up with him. Geez. Oh, Jimmy Earl, the bass player. So we'd been doing Simon's tour. Then we started playing with Cecilia Noel and the Wild Clams, which is a big band in LA. So Jimmy and I were playing together a lot. And Robin, same thing. The keyboard players weren't working out, or Darren Johnson wasn't available for something. And
Yeah.
it took a second for Robin to buy it. I don't know if he still buys my stuff, but we did get to tour together and record a little bit together, and then amazingly got to record with him and Larry at the same time and tour with them. And I
Amazing.
loved my time with Robin. I mean, I heard him when we were touring Europe. Just remember him being he was really angry about something. I don't remember what. And it was really hot in the club. It was like Luxembourg or somewhere. I remember hearing him play a long solo on this song, Hey Brother. It was like,
Yeah, sure.
it's like it was a 12-minute solo. It was the most, I'm saying, like, to this day, I don't remember ever hearing anything like it. It was like, I thought at that point, I was like, this must have been what it was like to hear Coltrane or something like at the
Mm.
Vanguard. Because he had endless vocabulary. He was so inspired. It was transcendental. Like,
Mm.
no, he didn't repeat any ideas. I laid out for most of the time. I was like, I'm seeing this from another world. I've never seen anything like it. I'd never forget that solo. Like, that would happen a lot, but that one solo, I just remembered, dude, I
Beautiful.
can't believe I'm here. Like, if I wasn't in this band, I never would have seen that. I would have never been in Luxembourg that night. So
Mm.
I
Yeah.
get to feel like that a lot. Like I'm just a fly on the wall. I get to,
Oh, come on.
it's amazing. Yeah, I'm
Yeah, yeah,
lucky.
yeah. The how did Mondo Trio happen? I love that record, by the way. You becoming a band leader, and did you already lead bands before that, or like in LA, like or
I mean, I had that quartet and we did a record that I just put out myself, Jeff Babko group that no one has ever heard,
yeah, I
which
don't
is
know.
fine. Because it's not mastered, right? It's like not a great. It was my first, I was 23 or whatever I was. Did my best. Everyone played great. Uh, so I tried that, and then when I started working with, Simon and was touring, I just didn't have time to lead
Of
bands
course.
and
Yeah.
really put in. And then I'd done a record called Project with Toss Panos. That was really just a bunch of things we jammed out at Toss's studio. He's a great drummer in LA. Um, so I just thought, well, this is going to just be in my drive or what. It wasn't even in drives then. It was like on hard disk recorders. I'm like, let's get it off your hard disk recorders. And I was just like, it's because we're losing the files and like, because it was old. This was like 2001. So I was like, let's get it off those hard drives and let's put it out, like basically to save the files. So that was another record. And that record had Dave Uzinski on it
Mm.
and Toss, and I think Mike Elizondo was on it, and this guy Dan Lutz and Albert Wing, great sax player. So that was kind of a fun just get it out there, and it was kind of what was happening at that time. But Mono Trio, I had met Jeff Coffin, the sax player, at a friend of ours master's recital for his college. We had a mutual friend, and we just hit it off. I just loved his playing, and I'd been working a bunch with Vinnie. I think we'd done Vinnie Colaiuta, and I had done some stuff with Robin.
Robin. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I was like, as a fan, because I'm still a fan,
Ugh, yeah.
as a fan of Vinnie's, I was like, any excuse, like, what can we do? And we hit it off, and I wanted to make a record where I could dictate like how I want to hear Vinnie play.
Yeah, it's like a record for Vinny. That's what I wanted to
That's
ask.
what
It's
I
like
wanted to
you,
do. I was
yeah,
listening to
yeah.
all Vinnie, and I know Vinnie loves Tony Williams, so I'm like, let's have Vinnie do what he did with Frank, but like he loves Tony. Let's see if he does. And he did. It was like he delivered. It was like exactly my playing. I can't. I'm super critical of my playing, but at least I got him to play like I wanted to hear him play.
It's a beautiful one. I mean, it's. I think it's like I teach guitar and we have a drummer also. I mean, drummer teaching in our school as well. And to every kid like who's more advanced, I give this record. I said like
Oh,
check this one
cool.
out because I think it's such a drummer's record in a sense. And Vinny, of course, he plays his ass off on that one. It's like I mean everyone in that trio, but especially Vinny's playing is just like man, what is he
That's what it
playing?
was about, man. I was writing music that I wanted
Yeah.
to hear Vinny play. That was the only excuse.
Mm.
And he was, I mean, I love Vinny so much, and he's from the same hometown that my dad grew up, Brownsville, Pennsylvania. So we have that connection. But he'd have his laptop on his floor, Tom, and he'd be reading the news, and he'd be getting so like into it, and then literally we're counting off the song, and he's still talking about it until he'd be like 1, 2, 3, and then he'd have the stay. I don't know, like those are the takes. Like
Wow, that's
he can
insane.
shift the most complicated. I mean, his IQ
Yeah, yeah,
out
yeah.
of anybody that's got that kind of musical IQ and beyond. I mean, yeah, we're really lucky we got to do that. We did another really amazing thing about 8 years ago, maybe less, maybe it was before 2020. So it was probably 2018, 2019. Vinny had this vision of doing a live streaming music, high quality music channel. And, you know, obviously technology is better now than it was in 2018 or 2019, whatever it was, 2018 probably. And, but we were playing basically stuff from Tony Williams' Ego record and
Oh shit,
Lifetime.
really? Oh man.
And it was me and
Mm.
Neil Steubenhaus and Vinny and Brad Dutz on percussion
Huh.
and mallets and Julian Coriel on guitar. It was ferocious. And I don't think it's recorded anywhere. I don't know if
Oh
they have
man.
the because it was supposed to be live stream. It was supposed to he had this vision that he wanted it just to be a concert and to come and go. But the drag is I don't think it lives anywhere. And I think whoever saw it and it was glitchy because the bandwidth wasn't probably fast enough. It was a great concept, but I mean it was scary and awesome. But
Yeah.
wish that could. And we did another really cool concert, improvised concert, which as I'm talking to you, I realize I have all the files and I could put it out with Doug Lunn, great bass player who passed away as well. And it was one of Doug's last concerts.
Mm.
It was with a painter, and he was doing live art, and we were accompanying his live art, and I have all that recorded,
Oh man.
and it's great. It's just never. We were going to put it out as a fundraiser for Doug's, where he ended up, the cancer research, um, which is never too late to do. So
Oh, absolutely. No, we need this music.
sounds
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Are you still also playing with Steve Gadd? Speaking of great
So
drummers, or
we just did a run of the West Coast about 2 months ago.
yeah, I thought that's yeah.
But I'm not going to Japan. Mitchell, actually, full circle, Mitch Foreman is going to Japan in January with Gad. I
Mm,
couldn't do it because I'm here with Steve Martin and Martin Short, and you can see them on the screen back there if you look
yeah,
over. Steve is
amazing.
rehearsing with the Bluegrass guys, but they added a bunch of dates. They added 6 dates right in the middle of Gad's, and I've been working with Marty for 25 years, and I also do the Jimmy Kimmel show in LA,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
so that's missing 2 of my full-time jobs to go to Japan for 5 weeks. That was the most heartbreaking. This is where it's good to be busy, but
Yeah.
playing with Gad was like, another very much like Steely Dan. Like I feel like with, and I'm a huge Mike Landau fan
Yeah,
too.
that's why. Yeah, I mean, come on.
Oh, it's like watching Mike play. He transcends the instrument. I mean, what he does with his hands
Yeah.
and his feet and the instrument, it's the most beautiful thing. I've never seen anybody do that on any instrument, let alone just the guitar. He's
Mm,
just, I wish everybody in the world knew. The amazing thing is that he's such a team player, and he's such a he supports the song. He supports, so he's not really gonna get the attention because he's not flashy about it,
yeah.
because he's just music. But Elizondo, who you heard me mention of, we used to go to those Raging Honkies gigs all the time and just think this is the best thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mike's one of my favorite musicians that I've played with or not played with ever. So I'm really sad about it. But you can't do everything all the time. It just stinks.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I love him. He's so underrated, man. It's like such a great player. Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
needs to love themselves some Mike Landau.
Yeah. Uh, Jeff, I will not take too much of your time since
Oh, I'm cool.
you're okay.
No, I'm all good.
I wanted to ask you about your writing. We started this talk with Clam City, and there's some beautiful tunes there, like New Wave Theater and that Bill Hilton,
Oh
Tribute to
yeah.
Bill Hilton, and
Uh-huh.
it's such beautiful tunes. Like, what's your story when writing and process? How do you start that usually?
Thank you for the compliment. That's nice of you. That record is funny. Like we had done some gigs with that trio before they decided to have a record label and record us. Um, we were playing some Carla Bley stuff, and we were playing a
Really?
Gary Newman song, and we were playing like the weirdest. I was just finding any music that was unexpected to try to take us. If we played a bunch of standards, it's going to sound like, oh, we're trying to be cool with standards. So I was trying to find material that is cool material, but we're not going to know how to approach it. Like I didn't even want them to listen to the original. Like it's just like, here's the thing. And I know we had all done all of Mark's gigs were fully improvised, which was incredible, but
Well,
I thought I'd like to at least have a kernel of something. And then if we don't ever visit it, if we play that thing and never come back to it, that's okay. Um, but what ended up being on the Clam City record was written the week before, like all
oh
within
wow.
that.
Okay.
Where I wanted to just have super fresh stuff we hadn't visited, and let's see what happens. So,
Mhm.
um, in that case, I've been really like in the last 10 years trying to write things that are simple rather than overcomplicated, and just like what's the essence? Like if you distill this, what's just the basic, just what is enough?
Yeah.
And what do I not need? And let's get rid of what I don't know. So if that's a 13 bar song and it's just that's what it is, that's great. Um, and those are the songs that I like listening to and playing now more than ever. So those are all kind of, I listen to a lot of Todd Rundgren, so there's some there's some, but harmonically, but it's trying not to obscure and confuse everybody, but like actually just set up a situation that's just that is what's it's supposed to be, not anymore or less, just like then that gives us a chance to go wherever. It's like this
Yeah.
is all this needs. Now, what we do to it is up to us in that, and it's obviously going to sound different from gig to gig, but
Yeah,
here's all, and that's mostly what I enjoy writing now. I really enjoy writing like that.
yeah. Yes,
Yeah,
nice
just
melodies also you've written. I mean, I love the melodies also. Like,
thanks.
you know, I mean, obviously then you go, yeah, in those 10 minutes you go everywhere, which I love.
Yeah, that's the fun
Which,
thing, and I
yeah,
could not
exactly. Yeah,
just turn on a
yeah,
pedal and let it go or not, and just listen to those guys play too, which is a blast.
yeah, exactly. Speaking of Martin Short and Steve Martin, uh, how did you end up on this gig actually and working with these two guys? I mean, since everyone loves them, like non-jazz question related, but still.
No, I mean it's pretty jazz. I had breakfast with Ben Sidran, the great legendary piano
Yeah,
player
sure.
singer today, and I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, which is where he lives. And we were talking about that. Actually, my jazz training comes in handy for comedy because you just have to be open. Like
Yeah,
if any improv comedy tells you it's yes and, which means like whatever the person gives you, you take it and you go with it. You don't shut it down. And so that's just jazz. It's like you have to be listening to everybody, and you either add or subtract. Doesn't mean you have to do anything with it, but you have to be listening and aware of
of
your,
course. Yeah.
and I think it includes the audience too, and the where you're playing. Like don't play what's not appropriate for the venue or the instrumentation. Like if I'm on a crappy piano, I'm going to play different than if So I auditioned. And I'm a big comedy fan, so I'd grown up watching SNL and SCTV, and I was renting Three Amigos at the video store every weekend with my friends. And so this is another one that's super weird that I'm with
Interesting.
them a lot of weekends. But I auditioned for Martin Short had a syndicated television show in '99, so I just gotten off the road with Robin Ford. I dyed my hair blue. I was bored, and we played the Jazz Cafe in London. And then I came back and I heard there were auditions for Martin Short. It's like, oh my God, like I know every sketch. Like, and his brother, Marty's brother's a piano player also, so he was
Oh,
auditioning me, and we just were. He gave me all these characters, and Marty does. I'm like, I literally know every. I can play the theme from this. I can. This is again what we talked about earlier. Like I had been studying my whole life for this moment. So.
mm,
Um, the band was great. It was Will Kennedy from the Yellow Jackets and
wow.
Rhonda Smith, who's now with us at the Kimmel Show from Prince's band, and Jeff Beck and um,
Wow.
Toshi Inagi and guitar, and it was just a killing band. Peter Michael Escovedo, Sheila's brother, was the MD. So I knew Will pretty well by that point. I knew Peter a little bit. Peter played on that Another Lifetime record percussion, so I'd met him there. Um, so it just fit right in. It was meant to be.
Mm,
And so Marty and I started, that was '99. So we started working 25 years ago. And then
wow.
we started touring as a duo 2001. He started trying his manager wanted him to try to do shows. So it's just the two of us for a long time. Then I arranged a whole book for local bands to play. So we'd have a pickup band wherever we went, and we'd rehearse. So three horn section and
Oh, wow.
rhythm section and a synth player. Um, and then Steve joined us about 8, 9 years ago. Steve was touring with the Steve Canyon Rangers, which I had seen the show and I was just blown away with their show. And then they decided to try merging them. And then that's what we've
Mm,
been doing since
interesting.
then.
Wow. Beautiful,
Super
man.
fun.
Fantastic. Well, uh, Jeff, I guess you'll slowly get ready, but like, what's still on the schedule for you for this year or for the upcoming months? I mean, do you have any plans of coming to Europe?
Man, I was just talking to somebody who's going to Europe and saying how much I mean, I used to go twice a year. I'd go with Simon or Robin or Larry. And I think the last time I was there playing, my wife's family's from England, so I get to go to
Oh,
England quite a bit. But man, it's been I think since Sheryl Crow that I played there, and
oh
that's a
shit!
long
Wow.
time ago. So I hope so. I have this band called Band of Other Brothers with Will Lee and Jeff Coffin and
Cool. Wow.
Keith Carlock and Near Felder.
Oh
And
man.
we just did
Okay.
a Christmas record, so that comes out next month, which
Ooh,
is super fun. It's a good record.
the
Hope everyone
band.
can
Ooh.
hear it. Band of Other Brothers it's called, and everyone's smoking on it. And we recorded it in New York, and we were all together, and everyone sounds great. It's the least, well, I mean, I did a great Christmas record with Lukather called Sentimental that if you can find it, it's worth listening to. That's another unconventional Christmas record. This is also unconventional, and super fun. There's Will sings a lot on it, and
Oh,
he's
check it
just
out.
it's just great. So that comes out. I'm excited about that. Clam City, we're hoping, more folks get to discover that, and I think it's on the Grammy ballot for voting, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll get some new ears
Yeah.
on it. I'm doing some gigs this week. I'm playing with a guy, Peter Himmelman, who I love, and Larry Klein. And then I'm doing some trio gigs with Anthony Wilson and David Pilch after
Oh,
that.
beautiful.
And then these guys, Steve and Marty, still touring into the new year and still doing Kimmel. So
Oh man, that's super busy.
plenty for now. And
Plenty
trying
for
to
you.
raise a 12-year-old boy. So, there's that.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
The hardest job of them all.
Yeah, sure. Well,
He's a good kid. So, and he plays the Barry sax. So
oh,
yeah,
really?
wish me
Okay.
luck, everybody.
Yeah, yeah. Fantastic, man. Uh, Jeff, man, thanks so much for sharing some of these thoughts. I'll let you cool down and relax a bit. So,
And now I have to deal with banjos, you guys. Don't you, wish me luck.
yeah, well,
Thank
you see there?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's happening right now. You guys are getting a glimpse of sound check here at the Madison Theater Overture Hall. But yeah, man, thanks for all the smart questions and for listening. And
Yeah,
as I remind anybody, everyone that's watching the show, we need listeners and supporters as much as we need players. So let's all support one another and
yeah,
listen and celebrate one another, because this isn't a competition. This is a big community, and it's a beautiful thing to be a part of. So
man.
thanks for including me.
Couldn't, yeah, no words left. So, if you're gonna be in Europe, man, drop me a line.
I
We're
will.
close to Slovenia. We are in a wine region here. We have a guest room and anything. So, come
You're
over.
speaking all of my languages. Thank you.
So, yeah,
Thanks,
no,
man. Thanks for
cool, man.
having me on. I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Jeff. Have fun tonight.
Take
So,
care. All right.
okay, bye.
Ciao.
Thanks.
Dr. Jazz.